Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones, and we're going to get you guys caught up on all the action with the Ducks. As you know, they only played a handful of games. They kind of had a break in the schedule, so we'll go over the action that they had in those three contests. And then we're going to go to a lot of injury news, which is expected, and some kind of late-breaking stuff that had come out actually as right before we started this podcast. Stuff about Fowler, stuff about Eaves. We're going to go into that and all the other players. That's a majority of your fan questions, of course, are about the injuries and how are the Ducks going to deal with them. So we'll go into all of that. We'll also talk about, the lineup, how that's going to look, and the upcoming road trip as well. So we'll go back, after the first podcast of the season. This is the second one now, if you didn't catch the first one, that we talked about the Ducks being a .500 team and, coming out of the beginning of the season doing okay. And, it looked okay, Eddie. It looked like the Ducks, they had gotten 5 points out of those first 8 games. They looked okay. And you had Colorado coming to town that was playing well, and it didn't go so well for the Ducks, Eddie. The Ducks gave up 39 shots in this contest. Colorado had 8 power plays. The Ducks got in all kinds of penalty trouble. They actually were only down 1-0 after 2 periods. And even Montour got a shorthanded goal to get the Ducks, within, a tie game early in the third, Eddie. But Colorado got the last 2, and they ended up winning this one 3-1.
Yeah, it really wasn't that great of a game. I mean, the Ducks took a lot of penalties, and that ended up hurting them because both of Colorado's goals that weren't empty netters were power play goals. So, when you take 8 penalties, there's not much you can do. We've seen this with the Ducks multiple times where you look at the end of the game and it's lopsided in the penalty department, and that's partial to blame on the Ducks as well for discipline, and we've seen it so many years that it's hard to not blame the refs a little bit, but you're shooting yourself in the foot when you get to that point, and the Ducks ended up getting outshot 39-18. Gibby got hurt halfway through this game pretty much, and Barré came in and did pretty well actually for the rest of the game. But yeah, it was disappointing. Colorado was on a roll, but this is a team that was awful last year. They didn't have their starting goaltender, and they had Jonathan Bernier, who the Ducks saw a ton of last year when he was on their team, and really couldn't solve him in this game. He made a couple spectacular saves, and it's just a disappointing loss. They fought hard, tied the game up, like you said, Montour, a shorthanded goal, but other than that, there wasn't a lot of chances in this game for the Ducks.
Yeah, and every game that we talk about, we always kind of have to go over the lineup because somebody's missing, and it's so difficult to keep track sometimes. And in this game, there was no Kasse, there was no Getzlaf. Eaves did come back and play. He had 1 shot on goal in this one. He didn't have any points. And like you said, Gibson, the theme of this injuries, it's just crazy, and it's going to get more crazy later in the show as we talk about some of the other players. But Gibson takes a shot in warm-ups in the arm, kind of a stinger or whatnot. He says he's good to go. He's only able to go the 1 period. I know we had a video that we had posted up on Twitter. Someone had sent us. There was a replay where you saw that it looked like he made the save in the first period. He kind of, they thought maybe lower body because of the way he landed, but you could kind of see he winced in pain, Eddie. He's probably going back to the arm because he kind of tucked his arm in too when he made that save on that video. That's up on Twitter. You can go check it out on that day of the game, and it's on there. But just craziness, as far as the Ducks not playing with a full lineup again. They haven't in all these games. Another thing that we looked up to is the man games lost. There's actually a Twitter account that keeps track of it. And going through these last 3 games, the Ducks lead the league, as I'm sure you're not really surprised. 40-plus man games lost, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately. But in this game, despite playing poorly, you thought maybe the Ducks would get a point in the third period, but Tyson Barré ended up scoring late in the game on the power play. You can only give this team so many. They had 8, which of course, how we feel about the refs in some of these games. But either way, the Ducks weren't putting forth a good contest to, like you said, and facing Bernier, you thought the Ducks would want to, get some more shots on there, but they're only able to get 18 shots against Bernier, Eddie.
Yeah, and it just wasn't a good enough effort, and it's hard to look at this team and try really and try and expect more than what you get. And the same thing continued into the game against Buffalo, and it was arguably a worse lineup than it was the other night. Eaves wasn't in this game. Kasha was still out. Getzlaf wasn't there. You had a bottom six of Kerdiles, Shaw, Bowl, Grant, Rasmussen, and Wagner. And then the top six wasn't that much better as well. I mean, the only offense you would expect to get from this team were from Perry, from Silfverberg, from Raquel, and that's pretty much it. And that's kind of been the story of all season. And it was the same issue in this game as well. The Ducks didn't really play a great game. They were outshot again, didn't get a goal on the power play, and they end up ultimately losing this one in similar fashion, 2-1, and then obviously 3-1 on the empty netter. And two back-to-back games against teams who really aren't that great. Obviously, Colorado has started out better. The Sabres had, I believe they came to this game with no wins, and this was the first
Correct.
win of their season, and they've been playing awful all season, pretty much in every game except this one. And this is when you would expect them to win, even with the depleted lineup. And again, just not a great effort from everybody all around.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, this was almost a mirror image of that game against Colorado. The Ducks only get one goal, another shorthanded goal. Actually, this one by Chris Wagner, who he's picked up his play. He's been, doing his thing, running around, hitting people, and he's contributing on offense. But like you said, you have that bottom six, and they're the ones getting, some of these goals, or we're getting a goal from defense. But, the top six, and I know it's not our, of course, our regular top six with no Getzlaf, no Eaves, no Kessler. The list goes on and on and on, but the other guys aren't really producing in here, and we'll talk a little bit about that too with some of your fan questions, some of the concerns you have. And so this was a disappointing game. You had Buffalo come in, like you said, they didn't even have a win. You really thought the Ducks would, rebound on this game. They weren't able to do it. Just disappointing, Eddie. Of course, the power play drought continued as well, and just disappointing. I mean, you have this team come in. You think you can take them, and you don't. You had Gibson back in net too as well, and the Ducks have really leaned on Gibson, so much, Eddie, in these games, and you'll see it in the next one. The game against Montreal, the Ducks. This is probably the wildest game that we saw the Ducks play so far this season. This last game, they get 3 goals in the beginning. Montreal gets 2 goals. The Ducks come back with 3 goals. Gibson with 28 saves in the second period. I mean, it's just crazy. 49 on the night, and all kinds of shenanigans we'll go into. But what a wild win. I mean, I was glad the Ducks, they had all that time off, almost, 4 or 5 days, and then they come out and win this game. They basically played 2 great periods, Eddie, and then the middle frame they didn't play as well, which we've seen that in the past. But overall, it was great to see them win this game, by a big margin too.
Yeah, and again, another struggling team, and at least this game, they picked up the play, and a lot of guys, picked up the pace and stepped in for guys out of the lineup. I mean, look at the goal scorers in this game. You have 2 from Grant, 1 from Rasmussen, 1 from Wagner, another from Vermette, and then 1 from the blue line in Montour. I mean, this is the scoreline you expect when you have this many guys out of the lineup. Those are the guys you expect to be picking up the play and scoring goals, and it finally came together. Like you said, they had 2 strong periods. The second period was just a nightmare, and thank God we have John Gibson in that. He's been unbelievable this season so far, and they had 30 shots, Montreal did, in that second period. 30, and Gibson stopped 28 of them. And really kept the Ducks into the game. I mean, Montreal could have taken over and could have been leading after the second period if it wasn't for John Gibson. And, he hasn't had much help this season, and he's been arguably the Ducks' best player. I mean, right now he's close to leading the league in shots against per game by goaltenders. He's only played about 6 games. He's got 236 shots against, so he's pretty close to the top right now, and that's not really surprising with the lineups that we put on the ice. But yeah, it was good to get a win against a pretty bad Montreal team, but And just hoping that, obviously we know Getzlaf's going to be back and Lindholm's going to be back. Hopefully with these guys coming back into the lineup, we can start to see some more regular play coming on.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Gibson, goals against, it's just so-so, 2.55, but you look at the save percentage, 0.932. I mean, that's pretty damn good, like you said, considering not only the depleted forwards, but not having Vatanen and Lindholm in there as well. So, I mean, he's really had to step up, and the Ducks have had to lean on him a lot. And, the Ducks are a 500 team. I mean, you can't be that upset with Gibson's play, at least. I mean, he's really come in there and done what he's had to do. You always worry if he gets hurt. He had that little minor injury, but he seems okay. So, it worked out in that game. The Ducks did what they had to do. It was weird. All the goals were scored at one side of the rink, in this game. It was kind of unusual, but all 8 goals were scored on one side. We had some shenanigans in this game, too. We saw Bieksa and Shaw, not the Duck Shaw, but Andrew Shaw, of course, go at it. And it's kind of interesting, Eddie. Shaw was doing his little pest moves all around there, and then Bieksa basically just had enough and kind of went at him. And of course, the fans loved it. And I'll tell you, the Montreal fans did not love it. I posted that video when I was at the game of the incident of what they had shown on the big screen. And almost 24 hours after this game, Eddie, I was still getting tweets from Montreal fans that were talking just mad trash about the Ducks and Bieksa. It just cracked me up. I mean, they were really, really pissed off about this loss, Eddie.
Well, I mean, you can understand the frustration. I mean, this is a team who was supposed to be one of the best in the Eastern Conference, and they've got 1 win in 8 games, and they haven't really had anything going for them. Nobody's scoring goals for them. Like Carey Price has been their savior the last few seasons, and he hasn't got much support, but he's been pretty awful in the first few games to start the season, and nothing's really gone right for them. They're at the basement of the Eastern Conference. It's understandable that you'd be still getting messages from them, and I think if we're in a similar situation, which I'm surprised we're not with the lineups that we have to ice every night with the injuries, but if we're in a similar situation with the Ducks for 1-6-1 after their first 8 games, I'm sure we'd be a little bit disappointed and pissed off as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is one of the teams that I think you and I would agree is kind of a surprise that they're not doing as well. And then they come in this game and the Ducks basically blow them out in the first period, and then they answer back. And like you said, Gibson kept the Ducks in the lead, and then the Ducks turn around and blow them out in the third with another 3 goals. So, it's a tough loss on their end. But the sad part about this, Eddie, is the Ducks lose Fowler in this game. The play, if you saw it, it's kind of weird. It's the Montreal player, was right by him, but it kind of seems like Fowler loses an edge, and then his leg goes down awkwardly. The Ducks aren't saying exactly what the injury is. We all know it. We were all worried about the knee thing because we remember last year with Giordano and all that nonsense. So they haven't said exactly what it is. There hasn't been an official timetable, though. Sportsnet said it was 4 to 6 weeks, Eddie. But then again, they also posted a photo of Lindholm. So I don't know what's going on with them. But how much credibility you want to give them. But as far as what the Ducks are saying and people we know close to the Ducks are saying is no one's given an official timetable yet. Could it be 4 to 6 weeks? Maybe. The latest thing that I heard, one of my friends went to the practice on Saturday before they left for the road trip. They did see Fowler walking around without crutches. He did still have a brace on. So, it's likely something to do with the knee, which is not a surprise. That's what we all suspected anyways. So that's kind of the update on Fowler after this game, Eddie. I don't know. You might want to talk to your buddies at Sportsnet over there, and maybe we could send them some official photos of Fowler so they get that correct.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it isn't 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously he is on the IR now, so it doesn't look good. With Lindholm coming back, it kind of softens the blow, but it seems like we get one guy back and another guy goes down, and that seemed to be the trend so far this season. We get Eaves back, and then he's down again, and then we get Lindholm back, and now Fowler's down, and finally Getzlaf's coming back. So we're kind of sitting here saying, oh, who's next? Who's going to be down next? And it's a tough spot to be in. It's we were saying before the show tonight that we really haven't been in this position. The Ducks haven't been in this position in a long time, if really ever, where they've had this many injuries to key players, and it just keeps going. It's not like, we started the season with injuries. We knew the Ducks were going to have a tough start to the season because the guys who were out. But then you get Getzlaf, who gets injured, and then you get Eaves, who is now injured and is going to be out for we don't know how long, and now Fowler goes down as well, and they just continue to pile up. Luckily, Gibby was hurt for a bit, and we didn't know how long that was going to be. Luckily, that was just a one-night thing, and he was back the next game. But imagine if Gibson was out too, and how that would affect the team. So, hopefully it ends here. We can get these guys back in the lineup. Lindholm and Getzlaf are supposed to be in tomorrow. Hopefully, this is it for the injuries. We can just let guys come back and start playing some hockey.
Yeah, and if you want to play, who's on the IR right now game, obviously Kessler's still on there. Vatanen is on there. He's supposed to come back soon, a week or two, it sounds like. Miller's on there. He's supposed to come back. We're hoping on this road trip. Obviously, Fowler's placed on it, and we don't know how long he's out. And then right before the show, we're about to record, Eddie, and we get just terrible news for Patrick Eaves. He has a condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which it's a crazy condition. It's also known as GBS, and it's the immune system attacking the nervous system. And we don't know how long he's going to be out. The Ducks put him on the IR today, too, to add to the list of players on there. And Eddie and I were doing some research because, honestly, we were like, what is this? We had never even heard of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not a doctor. I don't know any of this stuff. But we looked it up, and they did catch it early from what the Ducks are saying. But the treatment can be extensive, Eddie. I mean, it can be weeks, months, or even longer.
Yeah, and that's the tough part right now. I mean, it's disappointing from a fan perspective as well, because we all wanted Eaves to come back. He came off a great season last year. We had instant chemistry with Ryan Getzlaf, and he was supposed to be a big part of the Ducks offense this year. And then obviously personally as well, he's a great guy, and you never want to see this happen to anybody. And to really be, for us, the uncertainty is disappointing, but I can only imagine for him, he's not young anymore. He's in his 30s now. To have that uncertainty about your future and how long it's going to take for you to recover, it's disappointing. And we all wish him the best, and we hope he can be back in weeks, and hopefully it isn't months or years for him to recover.
Yeah, right now, obviously for him, the biggest thing is his health. We want him back to play on the team, of course, and that's, kind of being selfish from a fan's perspective. Of course we want him back, but more importantly, like you said, we got to wish for his family and friends and everything and his health, and that he has a speedy recovery. And it's just crazy. It just almost leaves me speechless, Eddie. Before the show, you and I were going down the different lists of things, and as if you guys don't know, we prepare our show in advance. Obviously, we talk about kind of the lineup and how we're going to do different things. And the news comes out literally 5-10 minutes before we're about to record this. And you and I are just like, WTF. I don't know what else to say. It's just a sad situation for him on a personal level, and then of course for the team as well. So we just hope that he gets a speedy recovery. The Ducks are going to have to figure out this lineup, Eddie. They did recall Kosla up. He may get some game time. We'll have to see now that we know Eaves is going to be gone for a while. Fowler's going to be gone for a little while with Lindholm back. But looking at the forwards, kind of going from that last practice, too, that they had on Saturday, looks like they might put Getzlaf and Perry back with Raquel on one line. Then Cogliano and Silverberg still together with Vermette. Then you have a third line possibility of Kasse, Wagner, and Ritchie. And then the fourth line is just a toss-up. You've got Bull, Rasmussen, Shaw, and then you've got Grant, who, Grant's come along. He had those 2 goals in Montreal. He had that one power play goal taken away earlier in the season. Now he got it. So we may see a lot of Grant there on that fourth line too, Eddie. What do you think about the lineup, especially now with, at least on the forward side, with Eaves, being out for who knows how long?
Well, with Getzlaf coming back, it obviously makes things a lot easier to have arguably your best forward back in the lineup and your captain. It's going to be a lot easier for the Ducks to get some good matchups. But Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, from what we've heard from practice, Getzlaf and Perry were skating with Raquel, so Raquel looks like he may be back in the wing. Obviously, nothing's confirmed, but that's what the lineups looked in practice. Possibly we could still see Silfverberg and Cogliano together. There's a lot of options they have, and it'd be nice to see Kasha continue to get some good minutes and play a top six role. And obviously, you've got guys like Grant who've been playing well on the fourth line. Wagner who's been playing well lately, like you mentioned. I think Logan Shaw has been fairly good this season as well. So, we've got a lot of contribution from down in the bottom six, and Cogliano's leading the team in points so far this season. So I think it's time for the big guys to step up, and it all starts with Ryan Getzlaf and him coming back into the lineup, and hopefully he can get things going from Perry and Raquel, who both only have 4 points in 7 games this season. And really the Ducks offense as a whole has been pretty stagnant. I mean, Silfverberg has 2 assists in 7 games. Like I said, Raquel's got 4 points. Perry's got 4 points. Getzlaf's been injured for most of the season, but he has 2 points in 2 games. So, the offense has got to come from somewhere, and it's got to start coming from the guys who are getting paid to score goals.
Yeah, and that was, a fan question kind of from Eddie Richard. He asked about that, who's underperforming and who needs to step up. And he also mentioned that he liked the way that Wagner was playing. And I agree with you. I mean, if you look at this Ducks offense, obviously we've talked about, leaning on Gibson. We'll talk about the defense in a minute. But if you look at just the forward situation, the players that really need to step up are, like you said, it's Perry, Raquel, and Silfverberg, in my mind. Those are the 3 as far as the big name type players that need to get it going. I mean, obviously Perry had those 2 goals in the first game. It's been quiet since then. Raquel's been a little bit of a disappointment, I have to say that. And the same with Silfverberg, unfortunately. They both have done okay, but, the Ducks need some more production out of those guys. Getzlaf, as you talked about, has been injured, so it's kind of hit or miss with him. But like you said, he's, if they go with that line with Perry and Raquel and him in the center, as they did in practice, I really look for him to start getting more assists, and then those 2 to get some goals. And I think the Ducks are going to have to lean heavily on them if that is in fact going to be their top line here going forward, which, from the last couple of practices looks like it will be. As far as players that have done well, Eddie, I think Kasse, Wagner, and Grant's really come along. Those are the guys that I like, the way they've been playing, and I think the Ducks are going to need a lot of secondary help, as you talked about.
Yeah, and the even 4 points for Perry and Raquel is a little bit deceptive as well, because 3 of each of their points came in game 1 of the season, and both of them only have 1 point in the 6 games preceding that, and that's not good enough from 2 of your best players and arguably your 2 best pure goal scorers on the team. I mean, it's been difficult with a lot of guys out of the lineup for these guys to get a consistent matching and to really get things going, because I mean, when you're putting Raquel and Perry on the ice together, most teams are going to focus on those guys and try and shut them down, and that most teams have done a pretty good job of that lately. But with Getzlaf coming back, it's about time that these guys get going and scoring some goals. It's hard for me not to agree with you. I mean, for guys that have been disappointing this season, you have to look at Perry and Raquel and Silfverberg, and these are guys that have to step it up if the Ducks are going to continue to start doing well and winning games. But as for guys who are playing well and are stepping up, I think Ondrej Kase, when he's been in the lineup, has been great in every game. He has 3 points in 4 games, which is a very good start for him. And he just seems to make things happen. Even if it doesn't lead to a goal, he's always in the right position. He's just an engine on the ice, so he's driving play for any line that he's put on. And I think lately Brandon Montour has been great on defense. And obviously now with Fowler out of the lineup, he's going to have to continue to play well and drive the offense, not only on the power play, which has been awful for the Ducks to start the season, but 5-on-5 as well. He's going to have to drive the offense from the blue line for the foreseeable future until at least one Fowler gets back.
Yeah, and I mean, at least the Ducks are going to get Lindholm back, so you're probably going to see Lindholm and Manson together, Montour and Boschman, and then Bieksa with whoever, either Magna or Holzer. So that's kind of what you're looking at, the defense. And obviously losing Fowler being the quarterback on the power play is a big deal. So they're going to, like you said, lean on Montour, maybe lean on Lindholm a little bit for that power play unit, which the Ducks are still last. They did get a goal, finally, thank God, in the Montreal game. But, they're still towards the bottom. I do like the way the defense has been playing, though. I mean, the Ducks have had to lean on Gibson. They've had to lean on these guys, too, Eddie. which has been tough as well, especially with, Vatanen and Lindholm out. And I think it's just they're missing that element, like you're talking about, as far as, they had Fowler, but, when you usually have two quarterbacks to run the power play unit 1 and 2. So maybe the Ducks can get back to that going forward here with a healthy Lindholm.
Yeah, and of course Getzlaf coming back, he usually plays the point on the power play, so he helps along with that as well. But yeah, really the main issue for the Ducks this season, which is surprising, has been goal scoring. We looked at this lineup coming into the season, with Lindholm and Vatanen being out, and I think we both thought that defense was going to be the big issue for the Ducks, and it hasn't been great. And a lot of the play defensively has to be attributed to John Gibson and his play to start the season. But the Ducks are currently ranked 12th in goals against per game, which isn't that bad considering the way they've played in some games. But they're ranked 27th in goals per game. And normally, I would say it's a little bit too early to be talking about trades only 7 games into the season, usually because nobody's looking to trade anybody at the start of the season. But
right.
You have to look over to Montreal right now and the whole situation with Alex Galchenyuk. If any team is pressured to move anybody right now, it's Montreal, a team, like we said, that is expected to do well. Have only won 1 game in their first 8 games so far. And you look at Galchenyuk, who's being placed on the 4th line in almost every game except for the game against us. There seems to be a situation there, and there's been a lot of rumors that he might be on the move if they're going to look into bringing in a defenseman to help out this team. And it makes me wonder if the Ducks could be looking at bringing in a guy like that. Don't think it's going to happen personally, but if we were able to bring in a guy like Galchenyuk, I think that would immediately help this team. He's something that they're desperately missing, that creativity and that ability to make plays out of nothing that we really only see out of Raquel every now and then. So I think if we could add a guy like that, obviously that would help, but I don't know if I see it happening or not.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would keep my eye on the Ducks too and see if some kind of move does come about. Now that we know that Eaves is going to be out, we don't know how long. The Ducks could do that. They are bringing up people from the goals. Obviously, Cossé up here right now. Wagner's doing well. We've got Rasmussen in there. Like you said, Shaw's been doing decent. Grant, obviously he's been getting some goals. He could have almost had a hat trick, and he should have had a power play goal earlier in the season. So he's been pouring it on too. So the thing with the Ducks is they're going to have to lean on a lot of these guys in the bottom 6, really, to try to get this offense going, Eddie, unless they do try to make a trade. And, the problem with the team, too, is cap space. If the Ducks try to shift Eaves to the long-term IR, which, it's you don't want that to happen, but based upon what's going on, and I don't know if they might do that with Fowler too. There's a possibility that the Ducks could get some cap space to make a move because Eaves is $3.15 million. Cam right now is sitting at 4. So there's some things that they can do. Not that you want to put those guys on long-term IR, but if you have to, they could do that to try to make some kind of trade, and then come the trade deadline, figure it out then. Because right now the Ducks cap space is only $200,000, and we even saw this last week. We didn't really put it out there too much, but the Ducks made some moves where they had sent some players down that were exempt from waivers, and they've kind of done it here and there throughout the season because, of the cap space issues, Eddie, and they're paper moves. So sometimes people get a little riled up, and that you see on the AHL website, oh, they sent somebody down, and it's not really that. It's just they're doing it, to stay above the cap. And they're allowed to do that, if the player's waiver exempt or they don't violate the 10-game, 30-day rule. And whatnot. So they're doing things like that, unfortunately. But, that's another question, I think, Eddie, is do you think the Ducks place Eaves or Fowler on the LTR or both of them?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think if they believe that a deal can be made, and, rarely do you see trades of any significant caliber happen at this point in the season. Most of the time, it's too early for anything like this to happen. I think it's a unique situation with Montreal and Galchenyuk right now, and I don't 100% believe that they're going to trade him. But obviously, as a player and a player with the skill that he has, he does not want to be playing on the 4th line, and I'm surprised they continue to put him down there. But it's an interesting situation, and if the Ducks actually think they can make a move, then yeah, for sure, why not? If Eaves you believe is going to be out for months, then why not put him on the long-term injured reserve and free up a little cap space to make a move now? But it would be difficult. Even putting them on the injury reserve. I mean, Galchenyuk's salary is $4.9 million. I feel like any deal the Ducks make would be most likely centered around Jakob Larsson plus. And then you would have to find a way to free up some cap space. They're, other than, like you said, putting Fowler or putting Eaves on the long-term injured reserve, there isn't many guys you can send back to free up cap space. I mean, you're not going to send back Bieksa. I doubt Vatanen is part of any deal if Larsson is. You're not going to send Cogliano back. Silfverberg, Raquel, they're all staying with the team. And then the next highest salary cap from there is Antoine Vermette at $1.75 million. And I don't know if I see him going the other way either. So it's interesting to see what kind of move they could really make happen. But I agree with you. If a move is going to happen, they would have to most likely put somebody on the long-term injured reserve.
Yeah, there's just no other way around it. And like you said, trying to send someone back is going to kind of hurt the team. I mean, if Fowler was healthy, yeah, maybe the Vatanen rumor could come back up and you could see that. But now that Fowler's out, I don't see anybody on the defense getting sent anywhere. At least, like you said, someone that's up there right now. I mean, like you said, it may be Larson or something like that, or another minor leaguer on forward or defense or something of that nature. But the Ducks are in a tough situation right now. I mean, I just, unless someone out there knows something that I don't, I can't remember a time, Eddie, that the Ducks have sustained this many injuries and of significant amount to key players. I think that's the key. I mean, there's been times that we've had the Ducks with a lot of injuries, but we're talking about big name players. We're talking about Lindholm, Vatanen, Kessler, Fowler, Eaves, Getzlaf. I mean, you're talking about, some that are all-stars, I mean, it's just crazy that this team has had to deal with all this right now, and they're going to have to push forward. They're going to have to carry on without Eaves and Fowler, and they're going to have to keep going. Like we said, Lindholm and Kessler are going to be back, so that, that's going to help. And the bottom forwards are going to have to generate some kind of offense, Eddie, because I just don't see a trade coming soon. Unless all of a sudden we see Eaves and Fowler both on the LTR, then my ears would perk up and go, okay, something's going on here, because you're talking about $7 million on the LTR. And that would certainly make enough room for a significant player. But of course, getting those guys back and then the trade deadline would obviously facilitate another move. So who knows if that would happen? But that's really the situation where we're at, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. I mean, at one point this season, you had both your top two centers, your top three defensemen, and a top six winger all out of the lineup at the same time. I mean, it's insane. And like you mentioned earlier, the Ducks are leading the league in man games lost, and it's not it's not to guys that aren't impacting the lineup. These are significant players that have a huge impact on your success who are out of the lineup. And honestly, I'm surprised the Ducks are where they are. I'm surprised they're a 500 team right now with the injuries we've had. I mean, we knew coming into the season Kessler would be out. We knew that Lindholm and Vatanen would be out. And then all of a sudden, Getzlaf's only played 2 games this season, and Eaves has only played 2 games this season, and now he's out for the long term. And now Fowler's out, and Miller's out for backup, and Gibson gets hurt halfway through a game, and obviously ends up coming and playing the next game. And then you have Kasha, who gets hurt and just came back last game. I mean, it just continues. Every game, it seems like somebody new is out of the lineup, and somebody comes back, and somebody else goes out. It's just ridiculous, the amount of injuries the Ducks have this season, and the amount of injuries that they've had to key players is what's amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, even Eve's whole thing, it's like, what the heck is that? When I saw the tweet, I'm like, I gotta Google what is that? I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, I was just like, I don't want to even say what I said because it's not PG rated, because I was really upset for him personally. And once I figured out what it was and I looked it up, and then you're more upset, like you said, because just the snowball effect of all the other stuff leading up before Eaves. So then it gets you even more riled up. So the Ducks are going to have to carry on, and that's what they'll do. I mean, they're, like you said, 500 team. They're in the middle of the division. I still think this is a playoff team. I know a lot of fans are concerned, a lot of questions about the injuries. We had Melissa ask, when are we going to see them all healthy? Well, we're probably never going to see that, at least anytime soon with Eaves out. We may see most of the team come back, I would say, by Christmas. Knock on wood, we have everybody back. Eaves and Fowler will be the big question marks, but maybe we get everybody else by Christmas. It'll kind of be our Christmas wish, Eddie, that the Ducks get healthy and we get most of these guys back. But that's kind of where we're at. Someone else asked about Kessler. There's no real update on Kessler. Haven't heard much about him. Other than he had his hip surgery and he's recovering from that. There hasn't been a whole lot new on that. Trying to look at some of the other questions we have here. Derek made a comment, will these injuries stop? I mean, and that's the thing. You and I are just every day, you're just like, what next, basically. But I think the biggest thing is what do we do going forward? And that's what Justin asked. And this team, I think the biggest thing, Eddie, like you and I talked about, they're going to have to get the power play going. They're going to have to get the secondary scoring going. And the star players that are in the lineup are going to have to do something. I really think those are the biggest things with this team is they need more offense from all over the place. And if they can get the power play going, then they'd be in a much better shape.
Yeah, and it's really just sparking the offense. I mean, it's easy to say that this team probably wouldn't be a 500 team right now if it wasn't for the play of John Gibson to start the season. And that's 100% correct. He's been their best player. But they've got to start giving him some support. I mean, other than the game against Montreal, he hasn't had a ton of support offensively from this team so far this season. The Ducks are sitting in the bottom, pretty much in the bottom of the league in goals per game. And like you said, that starts up top with the Ducks' best players. Hopefully, Ryan Getzlaf coming back is going to get that going in the right direction. He's the key contributor to the Ducks' offense. When it comes to the power play, 5-on-5, anything, he's the guy that it all centers around, and hopefully, I don't know if we're going to all see them on the line together, but Perry and Raquel have to get going, and whether that starts with them being on a line together with Ryan Getzlaf, or if they're on separate lines, something's got to get them going, because those are two key players to the Ducks offense. And then, again, you look at Silfverberg as well, who's got to get things going. And then continuing to get offense from the bottom six when these guys start going is going to be important for the Ducks as well. Obviously, Cogliano started very well. We've seen spurts from Andre Kasha, Derek Grant, Chris Wagner. When Getzlaf, Perry, and Raquel get going, these guys have to continue to play at the level they are now if the Ducks offense is going to climb back into the top half of the league.
Yeah, that kind of leads into another fan question we had, Eddie, from Michael. He asks, it's early in the season, but do you think the Ducks get in first place in the Pacific? He also mentions how Vegas is playing. Obviously, they started the season pretty well. What do you think? Where do you think the Ducks? I mean, there's so much going on, and it's changing, it seems like, every other day. But what do you think about the Ducks, obviously given all this recent news with Fowler and Eaves?
I don't know. I think it goes back to that question, and when do we think everybody's going to be healthy? And I think that kind of answers the question there. Is this team isn't going to be able to compete until they're 100% healthy. And whether that's at Christmas, whether that's early January, whether that's into February, that kind of depends on where they're going to finish in the Pacific Division. And you look at the teams leading it right now. The Ducks are a little bit lucky that teams like Edmonton and San Jose have both struggled to start the season as well. Because if Edmonton was a team right now that was 6-0-1, you would say, well, it's going to be very hard to pick up 10 points on the Edmonton Oilers and really catch them throughout the rest of the season. But Edmonton's actually doing worse than the Ducks right now. The Sharks have just lately started to turn things around, and surprisingly, the team leading the Pacific Division right now is the LA Kings, and right behind them are the Vegas Golden Knights, which I don't see it being sustainable as for Vegas, but who knows that, the Ducks right now are 5 points behind them, so they're going to have to make up some room there. So, unless everybody can get back healthy sooner rather than later, I don't see the Ducks winning the Pacific Division. I still think even with everybody healthy, they need to pick up another goal scorer. Most likely that would be at the deadline. I don't see any move for Galchenyuk happening, at least right now, this early into the season. But you got to look at the way the LA Kings have played this year as well. They've finally been able to score some goals. Dustin Brown has picked up his plays.
Yeah.
He's almost reborn, it seems like, on a line with Anze Kopitar, and he's been one of the best players in the NHL to start the season. So, it's going to be hard to catch them the way they're playing. Jonathan Quick is back to the old Jonathan Quick. Drew Doughty started the season strong. So, here come the Kings. They look like the team that won the Stanley Cup way back. So, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, we talked about this in the offseason too, about, the Ducks, we're going to get another, Pacific Division title, and, how they seem to win it every year, even under crazy circumstances. And A, I don't think it's going to happen. And B, I don't really care if it's going to happen. I'm more worried about this team getting healthy on a personal level and for the team. I think, like you said, the Kings haven't lost in regulation yet. They're up there. Vegas has only lost once in regulation. And will Vegas hold? I don't know. We'll see. And then you've got Vancouver and Calgary just barely ahead of Anaheim. So I think there's a chance that the Ducks can definitely get third. If they get healthier sooner than later, as you mentioned, they could push to second. But I think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at a second or third place finish. San Jose's not been doing too great. Arizona, as we suspected, wouldn't be doing well. And surprisingly, Edmonton, for whatever reason, they're down at the bottom. They haven't quite, put things together, even with their, bazillion-dollar all-star that they decided to pay him, which I'm not saying is not worth that money, but, they put all that money in there, and it's just, they're just not putting it together. So I think there's a good chance the Ducks get third. And if God help us, we don't get any more crazy injuries, that they could push for second. But I just don't see them getting first, Eddie. But I'm not concerned about that. I rather, let's just get everybody back, have a good second half of the season, go in there hard charging. We've seen teams do it, i.e. the Kings, go into the playoffs as, the 6, 7, 8 seed and then, run with it. So that's what I'm kind of hoping will happen with Anaheim.
Yeah, and I also think it's really too early for this question. We're
Right.
7 games into the season. Anything can change. You've seen teams last year go on 10, 15-game winning streaks and completely change the landscape of the division. Who knows? After tonight, the Kings could lose their next 6 games, and then they're not in first anymore. The Ducks could go on a 5-game winning streak. You never know. The landscape of this division can change in 2 weeks. So I think it's hard to answer that question right now. We would like the Ducks to be 100% healthy, and that would help us kind of analyze the way they're playing right now, but they're not. And it's hard to look at other teams, and especially, the Golden Knights were mentioned. It's hard to look at them now at 6-1, and at the roster they have and the injuries they have as well, especially in net, and say that they're going to be able to sustain that and finish near the top of the division. It's been a great story. For a for an expansion team to start 6-1, it's amazing. It's history. But are they going to sustain that? I don't think so. I think most people don't believe that they're going to finish in a playoff spot. So it's very hard to judge 7 games into the season if the Ducks are going to win a Pacific Division title.
Yeah. It is early, but as we do, we'll go each week by week, and see how it goes. I guess some good news is, or at least we hope, Eddie, is this upcoming road trip. The Ducks have 4 games. They're going to play Philadelphia, Florida, Tampa Bay, and Carolina. 3 of the 4 teams have not been doing too well. Philadelphia did beat the Ducks in overtime earlier in the season. Florida and Carolina are struggling. So the Ducks should, knock on wood, should hopefully be able to, win or at least get points in 3 out of these 4 games. Tampa Bay has been unreal. They just blew the heck out of Pittsburgh the other night, so they've been on a roll as well. So that one's going to be the toughest one on this road trip. What do you think about the Ducks in these 4 games coming up on this East Coast road trip?
Yeah, obviously the game we're all looking at is Tampa Bay, and then that's going to be the most difficult game. The way they're playing this season, specifically Stamkos and Kucherov, and that top line has been unbelievable to start the season, and they've been really getting points, and they've been getting good play from everybody. Vasilevsky has been unbelievable for them. He's 7-1 to start the season. Like I said, Kucherov has 16 points. Stamkos has 18 points, both in 9 games. I mean, they've been the best line and the best team in the NHL so far, so that's going to be a very difficult game. And I do think this game at Philadelphia tomorrow is going to be tough. Philly has been surprisingly good this season as well. I mean, they're 5-3. They're getting some quality goaltending lately from Michael Neuwirth. And that top line of Couturier, Giroux, who's now playing left wing, and Voracek has been very good. And then you've got guys like Simmons who continue to produce as well. So that's going to be a tough matchup. And then the other 2 games, I think those are games, like you said, that you would consider hopefully to be must wins. Carolina and Florida on their night can surprise you, but I think they're 2 teams that the Ducks would have to look to beat. And if they can come out again being 5-1 with the injuries that they've had so far, I think that would be a productive road trip. I mean, you always look to at least go 500 on the road, and if they can do that, I think that would be productive.
Yeah, and you mentioned going 500, which the Ducks are now. I'm kind of looking, and tempering expectations right now. Obviously, with all this stuff going on, I'm hoping that they're 500 going through November too. I mean, it's just, I know it's a little bit out there, and it's not what you want to hear. You would like to see them be killing it. But the other thing to look at too, Eddie, and we talked about this a few times before, is the Ducks have had slow starts in a couple seasons. They didn't really pick up things towards the holidays. And, at least this team, with all this craziness going on, right? All this negative injury news, unfortunately, because that's what it is. You do have to look at this team, and you have to think they're still hanging in there. And if they can hang in there for another month and get most of these players back and then turn it on around the holidays again, the Ducks could be in a good spot. It's a little dark days right now, unfortunately, and of course bad news came out right before we did the show, unfortunately. But I still have faith in this team. I'm still not going to get down on them. There's still good young talent coming out of San Diego helping out. Like we said, we're getting some players back on this road trip, so I think the Ducks are still going to be able to forge forth, and I look for them to still win some games. Going through this road trip in the next month, Eddie, and then, get everybody back as much as possible, like we talked about, and then just go from there.
Yeah, and you have to look at this team when they're 100% healthy. They do have one of the best blue lines in the NHL, and when you have Lindholm, Vatanen, Fowler, Montour, and Manson all playing in the same lineup, that's a formidable 5 of your 6 defensemen, and really doesn't matter who you plug into that 6th spot. Those 5 guys are going to carry the play and drive offense. And then once you have a guy like Ryan Kessler back, who's invaluable to this team, you can send him out against anybody's top line, and almost every night he can and do a good job of shutting that line down. And then that frees up the offense. We talked about this endlessly last year, how Kessler's play frees up Getzlaf and Perry and Raquel to contribute offensively, and it creates nightmares for other teams to match up against. It'll be great to have him back into the lineup, and then if guys like Kasha and Wagner and Grant and them can continue to obviously they're not going to produce at the same level, but if they can continue to contribute to offense, it's definitely going to help the Ducks. And you have to look at Patrick Eaves as well. Hopefully, like we said before, the recovery time is weeks and not months or years, but we really don't know at this point. But it'll be great to have him back, especially if the Ducks are going to make a late push to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and another point you kind of touched on in there too is, obviously you don't want these players to be hurt and be out, but obviously some younger guys are getting some chances here, especially on the the forwards and whatnot. So it's a good time to look at that. I mean, you look at Wagner and what he's been doing. You look at Grant, how he's played. Rasmussen's been in there as well. Kasse and Richie are probably going to get more ice time too. So you do get to see some of these younger guys step up, and they're going to have to mature and grow up a little bit sooner, which I think they can do. So, there is still some positive stuff to come out of it. It is going to be a little rough, I'd say, for the next month or so. But, we just hope that these players get healthy and the Ducks carry on from there. So we're going to wrap up the show here. We are going to have some watch parties coming up, trying to get some dates ironed out. So we'll be posting those in a little bit. So stay tuned for that. The other thing that was nice too is the Ducks had a law enforcement appreciation night when they played Montreal. The Ducks are doing a few of these throughout the season. They're going to honor the firefighters as well, and they're also going to honor military. Which, I mean, they do that each game, but they're going to have another night, dedicated to that. So, hats off to the Ducks for doing those things. And with that, we'll come back probably after this road trip, and let's go Ducks.